Submitting to the story God has for us has been huge for me in being able to overcome perfectionism and not get so worked up as I've gotten into deep cleaning and I'm like, oh, I wanted to finish that thing. I wanted to get it pristine. And it's like, well, I got it closer but I didn't get it done. And then that has to be okay.
Welcome to the Simplified Organization Podcast, 15-minute conversations with real moms about managing our homes and family life cheerfully to the glory of God. We can actually enjoy housework and love being homemakers when we focus on truth and work with gratitude. I'm Mystie Winckler, a homeschool mom of 5 with 2 graduates, author of the book Simplified Organization, Learn to Love What Must Be Done, and I run Convivial Circle, a community helping women to excel at homemaking and do life cheerfully. And today I'm joined by Annie Rajala. Annie is a mother of 7, a 6-year-old, 5-year-old, 3-year-old, and 1-year-old, and 3 more who are in glory. She's been married to her husband Jonathan for 8 wonderful years, and in those 8 years, God has sanctified and grown her immensely. From miscarriages to surprise adoptions, to hospital stays, to theological shifts, to moving cities for church, God has been hard at work in her family. She's had a passion for cooking nourishing food, baking delightful treats, and bullet journaling. She's been part of Convivial Circle for the past 2 years and is currently learning to take the baby step of rejecting perfectionism. Thank you so much for coming on, Annie.
Yes, thanks for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
So one comment that especially jumped out to me during your last survey after finishing the Ready 5 annual review process that we do. So you said this: carve out just 5 minutes and don't worry if you can be as thorough as you would like. Do what you can and trust that God will use it. And I thought that is just such a great message for all moms to hear, whether it's an annual review or just a weekly review or even just a brain dump. Doing a tiny bit without overthinking it and just trusting that God will use it is, I think, such a key, true story that helps us move forward.
I totally agree. And I think what's helped me so much in this process of just learning how to not try to be a perfectionist, because that's just how I've always been, something I've always struggled with. And I think first, a funny story that came to mind when I was thinking about this was back to the bullet journaling. It's something I've recently gotten into. And I think within 5 minutes of getting my brand new perfect journal, like the front page, not the cover, but the page got like ripped out. And it was just like, I think God has a way of helping me reject perfectionism more than I probably do in any, he just has a way of kind of interrupting my, I'm down that road and I'm on the road to, making this not fun. And he helps me to get perspective and realize like, it's just a thing, no big deal. And then now I can enjoy it. And so I think first, he is how I overcome perfectionism. But I think a tangible, like something that I've been learning how to do is just goal setting, vision casting, getting the big picture. Because I think perfectionism is often rooted in not really having a good grasp of like where you're going. And so you just start kind of getting anal about something really insignificant and small because you've lost that big vision picture of what we're going for here. And so I know my husband and I talk a lot about that 500-year vision. Like, this is a generational thing. This is not like one bad day is not going to railroad the whole thing. Like, we get back on the horse and we go, keep going. And so that's really helped me to get just in those, when I'm kind of swimming in the waters of perfectionism and I'm like, I'm going to drown. That just helps me, kind of pulls me out and gives me perspective in the moment. Another thing I would say is just the iteration, reminding myself that I can get started and I don't have to get it perfect, and I can iterate and make that small adjustment. I can make the change, just try something and then realize that I can always adjust later, and it's okay if it's not perfect now. But I know for me that when I'm doing the Ready Five, especially when I was doing that, I mean, just setting the timer and getting started was huge, and not spending all this time thinking, oh, did I get everything that was in my year? Did I remember everything? And getting all worked up about that, and just being like, okay, whatever was in my, picture. I looked through my pictures and I tried to find um, pictures in there to jog my memory or something from my journal or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's just like, okay, this is what I got, 10 minutes. This is what kind of I was able to produce. And then I did the next step. I wasn't trying to get super hung up about all the exactness of it. And that was good.
Yeah, I love that idea of using a timer along with it. That's a tactic that I've found so helpful to just get started. The 500-year vision that's a great thought, because that's not something that we are going to finish in our lifetime. So it just like takes that right off the table.
Yes. Yes. And like being the person that's just laying the brick, doing the small thing. Like there's a lot of humble tasks, a lot of humble beginnings that have preceded us and will continue to, set that trajectory. So I think as I was thinking on perfectionism, I think the big thing was pride is what gets in the way of us being able to submit to those 5 minutes, do the little thing, be humble enough to just admit this is the season I'm in. I only have 5 minutes to give, and that has to be enough. And I have to just like trust the Lord with that. I think maybe it's also discontentment, wishing you were in a different season, wishing you had more time. It's just, I think you just go down that rabbit hole, and it's just a lot of sin, a lot of need for repentance, probably. So,
Always.
yes. So I think, yeah, that was the dying to ourselves and submitting to the story God has for us has been huge for me. I think in being able to overcome perfectionism and not get so worked up as, I've gotten into deep cleaning and I'm like, oh, I wanted to finish that thing. I wanted to get it pristine. And it's like, well, I got it closer but I didn't get it done, and then that has to be okay. And I think for me, as I've grown in my journey, I've seen like I can walk by messes and write myself that rain check and know that it's okay. Like I'll get it done later. And so that's a big thing in perfectionism. I think, again, back to the original point about kind of losing your big picture, is you just get like, it's just the distraction. It's almost like getting distracted and getting fixated on things that really aren't that important. Like I made it better, and that's going to help make our lives better. It's okay if it's not pristinely, perfect or whatever. And it has to be good enough, has to be okay.
For sure. So I'd love to hear your thoughts too on that tendency to overthink things. That's definitely a distraction in using our time, and a part of perfectionism and wanting to do everything correctly and thoroughly right out of the gates the first time.
Yeah.
Um, so how have you kind of combated that desire to overthink?
Again, I think it's kind of rooted in pride, when we want to make like the getting started just this big ordeal. Like, oh, I got to overthink it. I got to have all my ducks in a row. I got to have everything thoroughly laid out. And I think just the act of getting started and the act of doing that next thing, you talk a lot about, having the daily top three and the weekly top three. And I think just not overthink, getting something down, putting that time constraint on, whatever you're doing, and just saying, I have to make progress in this amount of time, and just like doing it, for me, like with the bullet journaling, I love it, but I'll get, analysis prep, like, what I do, want the perfect layout and it's got to be, and it's like, no, just do something, and like I can change it later, or I can scrap it. I literally could probably rip the pages out if I hate it so much, but just do something. And I think not getting again, the analysis paralysis of like, this has to be perfect the first time. And it's okay, like just do it and you have the freedom to change it later. But the act of doing it is the important thing and not the getting it perfect. And so that's like, the action, the momentum is what you're after, not like the getting it perfect. What good is that? I mean, I'm not saying like be sloppy, but just don't think that because it's not perfect, it was nothing, it meant nothing. So,
Yeah. Yeah. That's a version, that is iteration, is you can't really iterate something unless you've started. You have to just do a little bit before you can really learn even what it is that you do need or what will work.
mhm.
It's usually something we can't figure out ahead of time.
Yeah, that comes with like maturity. I was thinking about my weekly dashboard and how it's evolved over like the 2 years or so that I have been doing Simply Convivial and Convivial Circle. And it's like, wow, I didn't even know this was what was going to work for me until I did it 100 million times. And so that's, to, and I think that's what's hard sometimes is the new person looks at the person that's been doing it for years and is like, how do I get to that? And it's like, don't worry about that. Just do something, it doesn't have to be all pretty. Just do something, and that's huge, I think. So anyway, the iterations is huge.
So, what fruit did you notice after taking even just that small amount of time to review and reflect?
Well, it's really funny that so we had a really crazy year last year, and it was one thing. We moved at the beginning of the year. I was pregnant at the end of 2023. And so I was like violently nauseous, morning sick and all that. So we're moving right at the tail end of that. We move about an hour away from family to our new church to be closer to our church family, which is wonderful. But a new place, I got a critical diagnosis in my pregnancy, like life or death, like sort of thing. Very short window turnaround from like I got the diagnosis literally 3 weeks later. I was being rushed into emergency surgery delivery of my child at 25 weeks. So it was like, and then it's just been like one thing after the other, trying to get her out, 4 months in the NICU, me getting better, all the stuff. So then like getting back into the Simply Convivial and trying to like get us back on course after all of that. And so it's the reflection was super helpful because with all of that, it could be easy to think it was those big trials I mean, those are memorable, obviously. But I think what I came out of all that and looking at all that was that it was the seeds, it was the small things, the small habits, the things that I didn't even know were holding us up. Because I was like, through all of that, somehow we had our joy intact and we didn't like lose our minds or our marriage or our family. Like somehow we all like stayed sane through that all. And obviously it was the Lord, but I mean, those, like our faith, our just like walk with the Lord, lots of things that just we had already done some huge groundwork in. And that just was very evident to me after doing the review and the reflection. And what it did was set me on course for this year to not set these outlandish goals, but to go now, like, let's just do the small thing. Let's just like put down, like, get those, reps in and just do the thing over and get better at doing the thing and not trying to add a bunch of new stuff. Let's just get really good at that. And that, having the humility to say that, just like, let's, just homeschool. Let's just try to do that regularly. Like that's a good goal. I think that would be a good year if we could do that. And so that, I mean, I'm very new in the homeschool game, but for me, that was just like, that's a good goal. Like, let's set that and not make it too overblown or I don't know, far reaching, but.
Well, that's a great testimony just right there that you're looking back on really hard times and hard situations and you're doing it with gratitude, seeing growth and progress and God at work. And that right there is huge.
Yes, yes. And is amazing to see God's hand in all of it. I mean, in the midst of it, we saw it, but just to see now where we are and where we could have been, and how God just carried us through. And it's funny just how God just speaks through all these different things when you're doing this review process. And then you're like, wow, there's all these things associated with it that God's already been teaching me. I didn't know it, but and I think I've seen you maybe quote it in somewhere on Convivial Circle, but the quote from Julia Carney about little things and little drops of water, little grains of sand, make the mighty oceans in the pleasant land. So the little moments, humble though they be, make the mighty ages of eternity. And so like that, even that part, just that was like exactly what I was thinking when you sent the message about the 5 minutes too. Like it's the humble 5 minutes, like it's the little thing. And that's like, don't despise that. Your capacity may grow beyond the 5 minutes at some point, but never be too, think of too much of yourself to ever go back to the 5 minutes. Like we all, have to start there. And so I think that was a huge thing that I got from that, and all the connecting of the dots was cool to anyway, and you asking me to do the podcast too. So
well, thank you so much. This has been such a helpful conversation and so encouraging to hear your takeaways and processing of your last year with gratitude and joy.
Yeah. Well, thank you for letting me share it.
Taking even 5 minutes to reflect on what's happened in your life and what God is doing in your life is so fruitful, like Annie was saying. If you want to give that a shot, but you aren't sure how to even get started, then don't let perfectionism stop you. Grab my free brain dump guide and take even just 5 minutes to reflect on your life and what's in your head and what's going on so that you can move forward with gratitude and purpose. You can get that free brain dump guide by going to simplyconvivial.com/braindump, all one word, brain dump, at simplyconvivial.com, or find the link in the description of this episode. I think that it will help you to repent, rejoice, repeat.